We got here. We got fucking dead shit versus fucking grubby. Holy shit. What a fucking B grade. What the fuck? Hold on, I can't open this. Alright, what is this? Is this comp? Hold on. 3 hours ago. The hardest places to reach on Earth? Okay.
Found in Canada and nicknamed the Valley of the Headless Men. I'll explain that later. It has no roads, and the only practical way to reach it is by float plane or helicopter, usually from Fort Simpson, hundreds of miles away. If you still wanted to visit it, you'd be required to register and deregister with park officials for safety. And in most areas, you wouldn't even be able to land without special permits or staff accompaniment. On top of that, Virginia Falls, the park's centerpiece, requires a reservation months in advance due to limited access and the need to protect the fragile ecosystem. While it's pretty beautiful, the history of the place isn't. It earned its nickname after a series of unexplained deaths in the early 1900s, beginning with two prospectors whose headless bodies were found in 1908. Over time, other disappearances and mysterious incidents followed, adding to its reputation as one of the darkest places in the Canadian wilderness. Also, the entire land is considered sacred to the Dean people, Surtsey Island. Surtsey is a volcanic island off the southern coast of Iceland that didn't even exist until the 1960s. It emerged from the sea during a volcanic eruption that started in 1963 and lasted almost 4 years. The eruption basically built up a brand new island from the ocean floor. Today, it's one of the most protected places on Earth. That's because scientists saw a rare opportunity, a completely untouched island, forming naturally from scratch. They declared it a nature reserve while it was still erupting, and it's been off limits to the public ever since. Access is so restricted.
Chad, do you think humans made volcanoes? I heard a conspiracy theory that humans made volcanoes and they're not made by the Earth.
That only a small number of researchers are allowed to land there, and even they have to follow strict rules. They check all equipment and clothing to make sure they're not bringing in seeds or other life by accident. Even a tomato plant once grew from human waste left behind, and it was removed immediately. Medog. This remote country in southeastern Tibet, near the border with India, wasn't connected to the outside world by road until 2013.
We ain't going there.
It's surrounded by steep Himalayan mountains and cut through by the Yarlung Tsangpo Grand Canyon, which is the world's deepest canyon. Before 2013, the only way in or out was by foot, through multi-day treks over rugged terrain. But slides, heavy rain, and dense jungle made travel really dangerous. Even today, the road is often closed due to weather and unstable ground. This extreme isolation helped preserve both the region's environment and culture, so much so that the area is home to over 3,000 plant species and dozens of rare animals. What makes this area even
Bro, we should IRL stream here!
In Tibetan Buddhism, Medog is seen as a sanctuary, specifically a bayul, which is a hidden land meant to serve as a refuge during times of turmoil. Today, the small amount of people living there are mostly Changla speakers, descendants of migrants from Bhutan. Pitcairn Island. The Pitcairn Islands are technically part of the UK, but you'll find them isolated in the middle of the South Pacific, scattered across hundreds of miles.
Imagine living there, bro.
Of the 4 islands in the group, only Pitcairn Island is inhabited, and even then, just barely. In 2023, only 35 people lived there. That makes it the least populated territory in the world, with permanent residents. But getting there is where things get really difficult. First of all, there's no airport, no airstrip, and no deep water port. The only way to reach Pitcairn is by boat, through a small spot called Bounty Bay. But you can't just sail up to it. Ships have to anchor offshore, and then people and cargo are moved to land by small longboats operated by locals. The surrounding coast is all steep cliffs and jagged rocks, so there's nowhere else to land. To even get to that point, most travelers have to fly to Mangareva, a remote island in French Polynesia that's 427 miles away, and then board the MV Silver Supporter, the only regular passenger and cargo ship that goes to Pitcairn. It only runs once a week, and the trip takes over 30 hours by sea. There are no other ways, and if bad weather hits, everything's delayed. Emergency evacuations show just how cut off Pitcairn really is. In 2014, someone who needed urgent medical care had to first go through a 335 miles open boat trip to Mangareva, before catching an air ambulance for another 975 miles to Tahiti. Pitcairn is so remote that even finding it was a challenge in history. Early explorers often mischarted it, and even Captain James Cook couldn't find it. Speaking of famous captains and ships, I want to give a huge thank you to the sponsor of today's video, World of Warships. It's title that you can play of July campaign.
We ain't playing that shit, Brody.
Welcome pack.
We're not playing that shit, dog.
You can get it right now by clicking the huge bonus. 2 free American ships, a special stars and stripes skin, 7-day community. You'll never run
this shit's still going?
And in the pinned comment to download for free and claim your starter pack. Oh, and the game is available on consoles as well. A huge thanks again to World of Warships for sponsoring this video. Tristan da Cunha. Tristan da Cunha, often called the most remote inhabited island in the world, is located in the middle of the South Atlantic Ocean, and it sits over 1,490 miles from the nearest mainland of South Africa, and more than 2,050 miles from South Africa.
Anyone live there, chat?
There are no airports, no runways, and no airstrips, so the only way to reach it is by boat, and only a handful of ships make the trip each year, mainly from Cape Town, with the journey taking around a full week at sea in often rough conditions.
Oh, shit, we got some
Even when
people
ships do arrive, setting foot on the island isn't guaranteed. There's no deep water harbor, so docking depends entirely on the weather. Strong swells often make it impossible to get out of the ship. And even before all of that, you need approval from the Island Council, proof of health insurance covering medical evacuation, a fully paid return ticket, and accommodation booked in advance, since there are no hotels, only guest houses or private homes that take visitors. Because of its extreme isolation, Tristan da Cunha has managed to preserve a unique way of life. The island has one small village, no mobile network, and a community of under 250
They have no
people.
fucking
Most
phones!
of them are descendants of just a few families. All land is communally owned, and outsiders are not allowed to buy property or settle permanently.
No.
Supplies come by ship just a few times a year, and the internet only became somewhat functional in recent years with the arrival of satellite connections like Starlink. Oymyakon in Russia is the coldest inhabited place on Earth. It sits in a valley surrounded by mountains.
Bro, where you from?
I'm from Oymyakon Highlands,
Oymyakon.
which is one of the main reasons it gets so cold. These mountains trap cold air like a freezer, and during winter, warm winds simply can't get in. At the same time, Oymyakon gets just a few hours of sunlight in the middle of winter, making it even harder for temperatures to rise. This extreme geography led to one of the lowest temperatures ever recorded in a place where people live. Minus 89.9 degrees Fahrenheit.
Chat, what's the worst spawn points in the world? Like, what's the worst places to be born? Probably like India, Oymyakon, and like one of these other ones, bro. That island with 30 people, that's a bad spawn point. Somalia, North Korea, Africa. That's got to be racist saying Africa. Scotland. Yemen's a bad spot to be spawned. You gotta say, bro, you gotta put the streets of India in there, bro. They're eating on fucking foot fungus, bro.
1933. There's even a monument in town commemorating an unofficial reading of minus 96.2 degrees Fahrenheit from 1924. For comparison, that's colder than the inside of a freezer, and not far
minus 71!
In the past, Oymyakon had around 2,500 residents, while today, fewer than 900 people remain. Travel is no easier too. Oymyakon lies along the Kolyma Highway, also known as the Road of Bones, which was built by Gulag prisoners. Reaching it by road is long and risky, especially in winter, and air access is limited. If anything goes wrong, help is too far away. Bouvet Island. While Tristan da Cunha was the most remote inhabited island in the world, Bouvet Island is the most remote island point blank. It's a small volcanic island in the South Atlantic Ocean under the Norwegian government, and it sits over 1,056 miles away from Antarctica and even farther from the nearest inhabited places. Covered almost entirely by glaciers and surrounded by rough seas, landing on the island is extremely
We should do an IRL over there.
The somewhat accessible point is a rocky area called Niroysa, formed by a landslide in the 1950s, where Norway has built a small automated weather station. Its isolation has even made it the subject of mystery. In 1964, a British expedition found an abandoned lifeboat on the island, with no clear explanation of how it got there. And in 1979, a US satellite detected a double flash near Bouvet Island, something consistent with
they got nuked!
But the source remains officially unexplained. As of today, the island remains mostly untouched, with large populations of penguins and seals. Amundsen-Scott South Pole Station.
What the fuck?
The Amundsen-Scott Station is the southernmost
Chat,
permanently inhabited
what state
place
is
on
the
Earth.
South Pole in?
It sits right at the geographic South Pole, and it's run by the U.S. National Science Foundation, so the station falls under U.S. jurisdiction. Built in 1956, it was the first permanent structure at the pole. Before that, Antarctica's interior had practically no human presence. Most activity was confined to the coast. That's because getting there is pretty hard, and the living conditions are pretty extreme. The station gets 6 months of non-stop sunlight, followed by 6 months of complete darkness.
What?
Temperatures can drop below minus 99 degrees Fahrenheit.
Oh!
During the polar night, violent storms and blizzards are common. But those harsh conditions also make it perfect for things like astronomy.
To work there, bro? Alright, they said it's a workstation, bro. Who would take that job? Dead ass. Who's taking that fucking job with a straight face? Bro, you gotta offer me like millions on millions to take that job, bro. I'd rather be flipping patties and putting fries in bags
and studying cosmic radiation.
Bro.
There's no port or road connecting it to the outside
that
world.
Shit sounds
Just
like
seasonal
ass.
flights from McMurdo Station and a 994 miles overland supply route called the South Pole Traverse. In summer, the station hosts about 150 people, including scientists and support staff. In winter, only about 40 to 50 people stay behind, completely isolated for nearly 8 months. There's even a tradition. Once the last plane leaves for winter, the team watches all 3 versions of the thing back to back. The Kerguelen Islands, also known as the Desolation Islands, they're more than 50 miles from the nearest inhabited territory, and you can't fly there as there's no airport. The only way to reach them is by ship, usually a supply vessel from Reunion Island that makes just a few trips a year. The main island, Grande Terre, is surrounded by hundreds of smaller ones, and the seas around are rough. The weather is cold and wet, and strong winds are almost constant, making travel and anchoring